Hello, and welcome to another Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers Artisan and Creative Showcase. My name is Mark Miller. Today I have another author here by the name of Diane McPhee. And I'm going to be picking her brains because she's one of the few authors I know of that actually writes traditional whodunit mysteries as opposed to crime thrillers. Thank you, Diane, for coming here again.
Nice to be here, Mark.
And to be completely open, she also has the same publisher as I do, Blue Forge Press. So, like I said, I wanted to pick your brains because you're writing a traditional whodunits as opposed to crime thrillers. And when I say whodunit, I grew up with stuff like Ellery Queen, Perry Mason, the Hardy Boys, where they would spread out this nice long plot and try to get the reader to figure out who actually did the crime. And so I got to ask, how did you get into writing that kind of book?
Well, that's an interesting way to look at it, I think.
Yeah.
Because in my writing, I don't outline it. I don't plot it out. I start with a mystery. I don't know who did it.
You literally don't know who did it.
I don't know who did it until it happens. And then I am so excited about it. And I call my daughter right away, I know who did it. But I am like 3/4 into it before I know who did it. So
the voices in your head.
Absolutely. And they're wondering and they're trying to solve it. And they're going all these different places, looking into the investigation and talking to people with interviews and going back to evidence and trying to figure it out until it happens. And then I give a lot of red herrings too.
Okay.
Because I think it's important that the reader, and I love to read, and I love to read mysteries, and I want someone to go down a little path and then to come back again and say, nope, not that. And so it makes it a more interesting story, I believe. And so Alan has got his work cut out because he is traveling along also trying to figure it out.
And Alan Sharp is your detective.
Is my detective, right. And he's 65 years old, trying to decide if he's going to keep working or retire. And so as he goes along and all of the new things are happening in technology and everything, he is kind of overwhelmed at times with that.
So who does he work for?
Boston. He works in Boston. He's the detective sergeant in Boston.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So how many years does he have on the job as a character?
You mean past years?
Yeah.
Okay. 30 years. He's been on the job for 30 years.
Okay.
And he's a solid guy. And he's well liked, but he also follows the rules. And so those who don't, he's watching them and correcting them along the way. And so it's quite a journey when you don't know who did it.
How did you pick Boston?
The first story is about an arson and a murder. And I lived in Boston, and there was a fire down the street. It was an arson, and someone got killed. And so that really stayed with me, and I thought I could develop a story around it. I don't know who committed the crime. I wasn't at the time interested in that. And so I decided, I think I'm going to make this work for me. And because I lived in Boston, I was very familiar with the street, very familiar with the town. And so it helped. It helped. In the second book, where Alan comes to the Northwest to visit his daughter who lives here, that also is a very familiar scene because it's about when two teenagers are murdered and it's a drug deal.
Right.
And he is staying in a community where they are in complete denial that there's drugs there. Not going to happen. Yeah. So he, being the Boston guy, comes in. So those are familiar. Otherwise, Alan has to find, I have to find the investigations for him.
So does he retire in the second book, or how does he wind up in?
He's taking a break. In the first book, it's his informant is killed, and so he takes a break, and he's like a little sabbatical, whatever you want to call it, whatever. And so he takes 3 months and comes to the Northwest just to
Get away from it all.
Chill it out, right.
But he can't.
No, and so he gets involved with another investigation, and you know, he's just such a solid guy that people depend on him, and they know right away that they can depend on him.
And that, as one who has spent 30 years in law enforcement, that can be a problem of being to the point where you need to give it up. You can't always get involved, but you also have that little nagging thing in the back of your mind sometimes of that you need to get involved.
Yeah. It's like probably a doctor.
Yeah.
You know, a lawyer. People come up and say, "Hey, I got a question for you," and they're like, "Oh, brother, here it comes again."
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
And so then, how does that morph into your third book?
The third book, Alan goes back to Boston, and his desk has been taken over by another detective.
Right.
Because he was gone, and now he's back, and she is there for another 2 months. And so he sits back with the other detectives and then solves a crime. And another character in my books is Enrique Mendez, who's a detective.
Right.
And so they work together. They're like partners.
Right.
And they work together. And in the third book, there's a kidnapping and a murder, and it deals with social media.
Okay.
And so they're trying to figure out how these cases happened and how the media was involved. But the kidnapping is the next door neighbor of Detective Mendez. And so he kind of...
Well, that's the victim.
Yeah,
Okay.
the kidnapping. The young girl was kidnapped. So, yep, he's back in Boston, and he's dealing with the lady who has taken over his office.
Right.
And he's always considered that to be his
of course.
office. And so he is trying to be very calm about it. And once again, you know, what I like to do, Mark, is I like to make my characters human.
Oh, yeah.
And so dialogue is what I use to move it forward. And so you kind of know what Alan's thinking, and you get to know him when he goes home. What does he do? He's got family. How does he react to them? And so he becomes this person who I hope that my readers will like and want to know more about.
Well, I think that's one of the problems that they have to a certain extent. I call them airport books, and I also call the unfortunate effect of Hollywood. People want to do the old quick action explosions, you know, as opposed to character and plot development.
Right.
And so it sounds like you spent a lot of time, like you said, trying to make these people not just cardboard cutouts, but actually real people.
They're real people. They're human. They do things that we all do, and you know, they have to find directions and look on their phone and all the things that, you know, go home, have dinner, they eat, they have lunch, and they meet new people, and they ask questions, and all the things that normal people that we all would do. Yeah. So I think it makes it a more interesting character. I like to write about a detective. I read Elizabeth George, Louise Penny, Anne Cleves, all these wonderful authors who have a detective who they follow. And so I thought that would be the way that I would want to do it too.
Right. So what made you decide to start actually writing in this genre? At what point in time did you suddenly decide, I want to write a law enforcement book about a detective?
That is a really good question. Okay, so I never said I wanted to be a writer.
Right.
You know, I'm one of 9 children, and no one has ever heard me say, hey, one day I'm going to write a book.
Yeah.
My kids are just like, Mom, you wrote a book?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. And so what happened is COVID. And so I'm at home and I'm just like, well, okay, what am I going to do? Because I'm a really active person. And so I was given these master classes, the online master classes, and then authors were on there. Now, I read like 3 books a week. And so I'm such a good reader. So I'm like, oh, good. I want to hear about the authors. I want to hear how they write their books.
Right.
In their classes, they challenge you to write.
Right.
And so I thought, well, I'm not doing anything. So I started writing short stories and really just kind of memoirs.
Yeah.
And I got a kick out of it. And so I was writing a story about living in Boston on this street where there was a murder.
Oh.
And I wrote that story. And my very good friend said, you know, this could be a book. And I thought, well, oh, okay, I need a character. I need a detective. And so I had this really wonderful friend who turned 65 and wrote a manuscript about what it's like to be 65.
Oh, okay.
And so I went over it several times, highlighting and writing and going, I think I've got my character. And so he became my Alan Sharp.
Oh, okay, cool.
So that's how it started. But as for writing mysteries, it was just because of that particular time in my life. And
so jumping back years ago, because you said you never even thought about being in writing, what type of career did you have coming up to COVID, I guess?
I was a teacher, an elementary school teacher.
Oh, okay.
And I did teach writing.
Oh, you did teach writing. But
of
you
course.
taught it on a
on
an elementary school level?
Right, on a 6th grade, 5th and 6th grade level, But I took a lot of classes, a lot of writing classes just to keep up, you know, and find out, you know, how kids are writing. And I've actually taken like summer courses on writing when having the chance to do that.
Well, see, years ago I was going to be an investigative reporter and wound up in law enforcement instead.
Oh, sure.
Sure. So I took some, back in the ancient days, when I was in college, I took a few writing courses, but that was it. And then, of course, that's 30, 40, 50 years ago. But then, like you said, then all of a sudden, fate, you just decide, oh, what the heck, I'm going to try writing just for, grins and giggles,
Right.
And then all of a sudden, like you said, you've got your stories forces themselves on you. And before you know it, you've got characters reaching into your brain, telling you what you have to write.
Right, exactly. Well, I was surprised that it was received so well.
Yeah.
I suppose we all feel that way.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you like it? And I was into my second book by the time that my first book was picked up. And I was almost done with it.
Yeah.
So that happens too. I don't, because I was sitting at home.
Yeah.
And, I guess that's one of the things that happened with COVID. A lot of people found like something to do.
Something else to do, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they decided to re-examine their creativity to a certain extent.
Right. I'm an artist. My degree is in art, and so I was pastel artist and a mixed media artist.
Well, then I'm going to sit here and pick your brain. How did you get from a degree in art to become an elementary school teacher?
I know. Well, you have to do something, right?
You're trying to tell me that you were trying to sell your paintings on the street and it wasn't working out,
No, it wasn't working. Exactly. We all know that that's not going to work. So you have to decide on, your actual paying job, and then use the other creative side of your brain to.
Were you able then to actually create or teach actual art classes in school?
Of course,
okay, cool.
Of course. That was one of my pleasures. I loved doing that. Yeah. But I didn't. It isn't like there's a success in it. You have your little successes. You win your awards and you have your sales and things like that. But it's different when you have a book. When there's so many books to go out there to the public, you only have one piece of art that you can sell.
Yeah.
And And so this is a whole new adventure, a whole new adventure.
But it, you know, and you found this out too. It's you've picked a genre because you're actually doing, like I said, whodunits.
Right.
I don't know of very many people that do whodunits anymore because they lump everybody together in this, you know,
Yes.
mysteries, you know, genre. And
Exactly.
they've got a, you know, a Mystery Writers of America group, and they got a Northwest version of that. But when you look at like I said, old school, I think mysteries, I think of the old, like whodunits, like what you write.
Right.
So I'm fascinated because of being able to write a whodunit. I don't know if I have the patience to write a whodunit. I write crime thrillers to try to explain how law enforcement works and make it interesting, but I don't have the mysterious, you know, criminal. You know, basically, you have an idea who the criminals are, you know, early on in the book.
Right. Right. In your book,
Yeah.
you know who it is. And right. One thing that I have going for me is my husband is a retired judge.
Oh,
and so
okay.
he reads them and then says, no, this isn't how it goes.
Yeah.
And so he corrects that. And that's helped me a
Yeah.
lot, because otherwise it would go out there and the people would say, that would never happen. You know, he tells me things like, that happens on TV, but it doesn't happen
Oh,
in
yeah.
real life. Because, you know, what other information do I have? And the other thing that's just, I think, miraculous is the internet, because
Yeah.
you can research anything in a second. And so as the book flows, like in this last book, I'm working on book 4, I wanted to bring in a profiler.
Oh, okay.
And so I researched that, and then you go down some rabbit holes,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, and you find out more and more about it. It's so interesting. And then I wanted to have an undercover person too, so that I internet that, look it up, and it's so exciting.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
And then, like you said, your husband was a judge, but also one thing that people sometimes don't understand, that depending upon whether it's federal, state, local, you know, even tribal type of enforcement, there are twists and turns and tweaks that you may get away with in one jurisdiction, you're not going to get away with in another jurisdiction. But like you said, also, you know, people watch television. I watch television and I see these interrogations going on, you know, where they're getting in people's faces and threatening them and, you know, and shoving around and stuff. And I'm looking at them and I'm going, well, that would have been an internal affairs investigation.
Yeah,
you know?
of course.
You know, 'cause I was in internal affairs years ago, and
Right.
somebody would have made a complaint about that. That guy would have got sued, you know. And I
Yeah.
think that's the problem, is like I said, the Hollywood version, plus, of course, the time frame, like in your books, how long does it take for the story and the investigation to conclude?
I put the time down.
Yeah.
And so it's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
And so that's how I format the book.
Right.
And so if we start on you know, Monday,
Yeah.
and there's a crime, then you're going to know everything that happened on that Monday that I want you to know. That I want you to know.
Right.
Okay, and then we'll go to Tuesday. And so in one book, it's taken 2 weeks, and another 4 weeks. And my husband will say, it takes longer than that. I'll go, I don't care.
Yeah. I just came back from we have this little monthly group up in Port Townsend. It's called Corps, and it's all a bunch of retired cops and federal agents and you name it. So we all get together and swap lies and all that good stuff. And we have one individual who was a long-term Seattle Police Department homicide detective, and he's written a book and is working on his second one, nonfiction. And so he tells us about a lot of his cases, and some of them do go on for a long period.
Yes.
But then you've got those that are flash in the pan, where 2 days later you figured out who did the murder. So it's like, you know, it's one extreme to the other, I guess you
Right.
kind of get at. So they can get wrapped up quick depending upon, you know, the situation. But it is true, like that's what I show when I wrote about federal investigations. How all the steps in the hoops you have to jump through, which take time.
Right. Because I do day by day, this helps me to bring in my characters, all
Yeah.
of the characters that I want, introduce them, and how they got involved with it. So
Right.
you understand how they got involved. It keeps, and I don't know how I came up with that except from all my reading.
Yeah.
That I liked books like that.
Yeah.
I like to know that the next day what happened. And then I had to decide on, okay, what's the weather like during February,
Yeah.
during
Well, so, yeah,
June,
environment,
and like
yeah.
he's coming to the Northwest in the middle book
Yeah.
during the summer. And so, got to talk about the weather. And so all of these things help because I have given specifically
Right.
that particular date. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really helped me. Why I decided that, I just did.
Well, we're getting to the end of this portion of the interview. We're going to have a part 2 involving something else that our publisher has come up with to tie in with our books, of course. So where can they find your books?
They're on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Blue Forge.
Okay. And do you have a website?
I don't have one yet.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, you're
I
going
will,
to have to get one.
I know. I have to do that.
And everything. So that'll, like I said, that will end this portion of our interview, and then we'll go into another little subject that involves
The game.
a game that involves marketing, which is something we like to discuss here on KLAW. Is once you get that book written, what do you do with it? So, once again, we're here at the Remington Kitsap Access Studios, and thanks to their excellent assistance, we're able to put on this Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers Showcase. We are here to help all of the artisans in the area. KLAW exists for that purpose. Thanks to the BCAT staff, we were then able to do these shows and broadcast them on Comcast Channel 12 and Wave Cable Astound Channel 3 on Saturday at 6 and 6:30. So take a look at the BCAT schedule. They also use some of our shows as fillers, and we also have, if you look up KLAW on YouTube, there was a KLAW channel under Tiny CC, and also Blue Forge Legacy, Blue Forge Group, and Blue Forge Press, which is our publisher. You can look that up on YouTube, and you'll see quite a bit of other authors and other material. We would really appreciate this. We really appreciate the support of the viewing public, and also keep a lookout for various venues and locations where the authors that are members of Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers are out there having their book signings and letting you, as the reading public, see their works of creativity. And with that, have a pleasant day and an even more productive tomorrow. Good day.